Yes. Good evening and welcome. I am calling to order the meeting of the Newburyport Public Schools School Committee for Monday, June 18th. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. DeCanta.
Here.
Mr. Cole.
Here.
Mr. Menon.
Here.
Mayor Holliday.
Present.
Mr. Hawkeiser.
Here.
Mr. Reardon.
Here.
Mr. Callahan.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Great. Before we go to our first period of public comment, I would draw the members of the committee's attention to some late changes to the agenda. After we are introduced to the Bresnahan Assistant Principal, we'll be going to the SPED presentation. The sixth item, approval of the Newburyport High School Student Handbook. You may have noticed that we didn't have a copy of it to look at beforehand. That is because changes are still being made to it. We will approve this either at our retreat or in the August meeting. So, and we will have copies of it by then. We come to our first and only session of public comment. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to share anything with the school committee, we would ask you to step up, give us your name and address, and try to keep it to 2 minutes. Seeing none?
Wow, Mother Nature's spoken.
Sure has.
My house is getting trashed.
Can we put an emergency generator in this room?
Not yet.
Okay, just what it is.
It's wired for one. We ran out of money.
We're going to move to the consent agenda. Do we have warrants?
Yes, we do. 3 warrants. I move that the following named bills and payrolls for the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $1,227.34 be approved for the city auditor to make payment and deduct funds from the school's account. There are no conflicts.
Second?
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
The next warrant, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $102,212.07 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
And the last warrant, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $334,007.14 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. We have, thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
We have a set of minutes from our 6/4/18 business meeting. Will somebody move them?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, any changes? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting them?
Aye.
Opposed? We are set with the minutes. Our Newburyport High School student representative is not here, so we will not be getting a presentation from him. I would turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. I am pleased tonight to introduce Ann Doble to you. Ann is the new assistant principal at Bresnahan. Ann is coming to us from the Acton-Boxborough school system, and she's been there for 18 years. She has taught preschool and grades 1 through 4, and she is currently teaching 5th grade. She also has background in STEM. She's a member of the Technology Planning Committee, and she, I know, is pretty excited to be here. So I'm going to let her just speak for a minute.
Thank you for welcoming me this evening. I am thrilled to be part of the Newburyport Public Schools this upcoming school year. One of the things that drew me away from Acton into Newburyport was the level of support that you have for the STEM programming. in the early childhood grades all the way up through the high school. It is something that I love, and I love to see students with diverse learning needs be able to participate in. And it is a program at the Bresnahan that I'm particularly impressed with. In addition, I would love to thank you all for giving such support to the multitude of students that you have in the school district with all the various supports that you have in place already. So I'm thrilled to be here in the district. Thank you.
Welcome.
Christina, Amy, anything to add?
I think we would just like to share how excited we are. We've been in communication over these last few weeks. We've started to interact with one another and get our kids started as a team, and that also includes Gina, our special education coordinator. And tomorrow, Ann will be in the district for a day. She already spent a day, which happens to be the day of our STEM Expo. So that was awesome. And July 1st will be here before we know it.
And I will just add that tomorrow she'll get to see the whirlwind of preschool kindergarten screening as we welcome our newest children tomorrow. We have a whole bunch of little ones descending upon us. Anne was a clear choice of the committee, and I am really thrilled to work with someone that not only has such a diverse background in elementary, but preschool and is an avid skier. So I hope to see her on the slopes.
Welcome to the district.
Thank you. Welcome.
Again, as with our amended agenda, we're going to have a presentation. Again,
We're having some technical problems, but I'll start. I can start anyway. Do you want to know? Is that right? Okay. And I do have paper handouts for.
You did?
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Oh, I don't know. Would it make sense for me to start while? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, well, we're trying to get a video hooked up, so we'll deal with that in a minute. So thank you for having me. I know there's a lot on the agenda tonight. I know it's a very busy time of year, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I also want to, the team coordinators are here, so Tara Ellis is here for grades 4 through 8. Gina Gardino is here for the high school, and then Gina Anderson is here for the Bresnahan.
What did you want?
Well, we thought, wait a minute.
Okay. This is an
Nobody
overview.
breathed.
All right, this is an overview. The next thing you know, the power will go out. This is an overview of, all right. This is an overview of the presentation. I have some data to review with you, some indicators from the Department of Education, and I'll explain that. And also, where there are several new school committee members, I thought it would make sense just for me to do a brief overview of the programming and services in the district, to talk about trends and areas of focus and then successes. So the Student Services Office encompasses these areas. Special education, I already introduced the team chairs. Dawn Clay is in the office as well and kind of holds everything together. Section 504, nursing. Kathy Riccio is the head of nursing, and we have really excellent nursing supports in every building. Civil rights and Title IX. Behavioral health is really, I would say, a joint effort. That's something that Angela and I have worked a lot on this year. And then RTI, we do have RTI interventionists and coordinators in every building. So this is an overview of this year's data on special education. So this is a snapshot as of, I think it's June 5th. Since that time, obviously, there have been a number of IEP meetings and whatnot. But as of June 5th, these were the statistics. And last year at the time of my presentation, which was in March, our average was 16% of all students were on IEPs, so it has increased. The current state average is at 17.7%, and a recent informal survey of about 10 North Shore districts had actually the average up here being at 19.7. Now that was a more informal survey. If I had to guess, I think that districts across the board are seeing an increase in students on IEPs. And then you can see also there's a pattern generally that the percentage goes down pretty much as you get kind of higher, and so in the grades, and so at the high school it is 17.5. That number at the Mullen, I actually think by the end of the year will increase. Our number of students in out-of-district placements is the same as it was last year. It's about 6.2% of students on IEPs, and this has remained pretty consistent. So, and then in terms of 504s, I did want to include some data on those. This is actually sort of the opposite trend from IEPs. You see lower numbers at the earlier grades, and then it increases at the higher grades. There are a couple possible reasons for this. One is that students, as they go into high school, they learn strategies and they meet with success, and we do see higher numbers of students coming off IEPs at the high school, and oftentimes they continue to have a disability and may still need accommodations, so that would be a 504 plan. And then we do see some situations at the high school where parents ask for a 504 plan to get their students accommodations on SAT testing. Sometimes that is necessary.
And MCAS?
I'm sorry?
And MCAS?
Yes. Yeah, we tend to see it more at the high school for the SATs.
Okay.
These are the disability categories. So I did a comparison just with this year and last year. And it may not be quite longitudinal enough to draw huge conclusions, but it is interesting to note some changes in here. So health is typically ADD, not always, but most of the time health, I would say 90% of the time health is ADD. And you will note these numbers do not add up to 100%. The reason for that is that our data system, some students, if they had their meetings recently, they haven't yet been coded in the system as having a disability category, so that's where I kind of pulled all the data from. I'll talk more about the implications of this in a minute.
Can I ask you a question though,
Sure.
before you move off of that table? So these are all students who have IEPs, these disability categories?
Correct.
Could you describe what neurological is?
Sure. So neurological, sometimes ADD can fall under that as well. You can see students with seizure disorders with very complex
psychological profiles. So for example, sometimes a student with a very, very low processing speed, a combination of something like that and ADD, exactly, coming together to form a complex profile that really can't be described alone by another category will fall under that.
And then for the same reason, could you talk about health?
Sure. So again, health, most of the time it ends up being ADD. The state and federal regulations, that is sort of, that's an example of it being.
Are they covered in both categories, then, neurological and health?
No, most of the time it's one or the other. I think you really only would have a student with ADD qualifying as neurological where it was a very complicated profile that was part of a whole. But certainly we do see some students with other health issues, who would fall under that category, but that's more the exception.
Thank you.
So this is some data as of June 5th on the number of students who have been referred for special education this year. As of that time, it was 124 referrals and 54 had been found eligible. We do have a lot of meetings between June 5th and the end of the year. So even if I were to update this as of this Friday, it would be different. And the number of referred students is the third highest since 2008 to 2009, which is as far back as the data that we've been tracking. And the increase, interestingly, has been at early childhood, Amy, that's an increase of 35%. That is something that we get our referrals from early intervention. So that is what it is. And then at the Mullen, the increase was 110%. So there was a huge increase in referrals at the Mullen. That's something that Tara Rossi and we've been discussing. And then at the high school, Knock and the Bresnahan, it's largely been consistent. But again, we need to look at that data at the end of the year.
If I could just ask, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Cannon. The first bullet that you've got there, with 43% being found eligible of 124 referrals, how does that look compared to last year and the year before and the year before? What the percentage of kids that are getting IEPs who are being referred?
Right, and I can get you that that breakdown, but pretty much every year the range of the percentage of students found eligible ranges from, it looks like a high of maybe 63% to a low of like 38%. So that's kind of the range. I don't know what the average would be, but yeah.
Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, a question on the Mullen increase of 110%. How many actual students does that 110 represent? Because it could be going from 2 to 5. And
right, it's going from 10 to 21. Okay. So that's in my mind, that is a significant.
It's almost the whole class, 21.
Do you have any thoughts about that point in the kids' development and us identifying kids? I mean, a lot of these kids we've had since they were in kindergarten,
sure.
And they're picking up an IEP at the moment. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, I think certainly in 4th grade the demands change, and I think we all know it switches from learning to read to reading to learn, and that's a major developmental step, and I think a lot of it is relevant to the presentation that Emily Russet and I did around kind of the language-based learning disabilities and whatnot. I do think what would be interesting, and I can kind of look at this when we have the data, is to see what the disability categories are for the students who are being found eligible. If that, yeah, because I do think that would yield some interesting information.
These referrals, are they coming from mostly from home or through the RTI process, or is there a mix?
So it is a mix, and we do track that data. I just don't. We look at it at the end of the year. So I certainly can share that, but I don't have that data as of yet. I don't think. Certainly looking at it this year, it looks like it's more parents, but I would have to analyze that at the end of the year.
Okay.
So So indicators are state-required sort of benchmarks. And I have not included all of them here. I think there are 14 of them. I just kind of pulled a few out that were honestly, that I thought were interesting to look at. They can be found on the Department of Ed website. Some of the indicators are looked at annually, and then others are on a cycle so this indicator pulls the data. We don't have to produce it. Other indicators, we have to send the data to the Department of Ed. So this is the percentage of students on IEPs who graduate with a regular diploma within 4 years. As you can see, we're above the state rate, but the state target is 86%, and we're at 76. So certainly we're doing well, but I think some room for improvement on that. This is please.
Sorry,
Yep.
do you know how many schools are actually making that state target?
I don't. That's a good question, though.
Realistic, or another one of these pie in the
Yeah.
sky?
Another question, is this students who are on the IEPs at the high school or students who have ever been on an IEP in our district?
I think it's students who are on IEPs at the high school, I believe.
So that in effect might, in a way, bias the results a little bit, because if we're doing a good job at the middle school, for example, and students come off their IEPs,
Or high school.
their graduation is still part of the success of the program.
Mm-hmm. Right. I would agree with that. This measures the percentage of students in grades 9 through 12 who dropped out of school between July 1st and June 30th prior to the listed year and who did not return to school by the following October 1st. And dropouts are defined as students who leave school prior to graduation for reasons other than transfer to another school. So what is interesting is that this was actually, I went back and I looked on the Department of Ed website, this was our highest percentage of students with IEPs who had dropped out since 2007, which was surprising to me. It's only 4 students, so it's a small number, but it still equates to 5.5%, which is above the state rate and above the state target. So this is something that I really do want to dig into, especially with the new principal coming on board, and really to unpack that. This just talks about the different types of placements and where the percentage of students for our district that fall into those placements. And then it has the state rate and the state target. So you can see in terms of percentage of students who are outplaced, that is different than my earlier percentage because the point in time at which this data was taken was different. But you can see that we're pretty much commensurate with the state target for that. In terms of substantially separate, and that's really students who are removed from the general education setting most of their day, we're below the state target, which is great because we all want students to be in the gen ed setting as much as possible. And this is one of the indicators that I mentioned. It's on a cycle, so we actually are going to be measuring this again this year, but I did want to show you this because it shows that really, I think overall, the number of students who, when they graduate, are enrolled in higher education or competitively employed or some other kind of employment. And again, the sample size is very small, right? It's 6 to 8 students. But that is something that students are finding success with that.
Can I just jump back? I'm really sorry.
Sure.
If we could just jump back to indicator 5. The district rate for full inclusion is significantly higher than the state target. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little about that.
My assumption is that, the state target, to me, the higher percentage of students who are in full inclusion and obviously making progress and meeting with success, the better. So my assumption is that if those things are all true, then it's a positive thing to have a higher number than, or a higher percentage than the state target. So I thought I could do a brief review of our programming, and again, these programs are flexible. They're sort of more, overlapping circles. So we have some students who receive services from more than one program. In no way are they mutually exclusive. So BEST is Becoming Excellent Social Thinkers. And it really encompasses students on the autism spectrum or students who have a combination of social, behavioral, and academic needs. The focus areas I've listed there. The IDC program is really for students with a wide range of learning differences. They require a higher level of support, intellectual impairments, and that program really focuses on life skills. Language-based services, I won't go too much in depth with this because pretty recently Emily and I discussed that. And then our therapeutic programming, we really have seen an evolution in this type of programming here. We have had to move towards more flexible programming. We're seeing more students who are not on IEPs who require interventions, and for example, students who may be able to attend 1 or 2 classes, but then they need to kind of come out and have a quiet place to do their work when they're feeling anxious. We've partnered with an organization called BRYT. It's BRYT. I mention it in a later slide. It stands for Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition, and they partner with districts. Right now they're working with, I believe, over 70 districts. They partner with districts to create intensive short-term programming for students who are returning from hospitalization, really. And they're going to be consulting with us at every level next year, which is really exciting. We've done a lot of work with them at the high school. So that's a...
When you say they provide programming, what is right involvement with the student look like?
Yeah, so they're not directly involved with the student. They've been coming and meeting with, for example, this year at the high school, they've met with a core group of us. Dave Clay is somewhat involved with Newburyport Academy. Gina has been at the meetings. So we meet as a group, and we are looking at ways to support students who maybe they don't need to be in a separate setting for the entire day, but they do need a point person. They do need a quiet place to go and do work. And so they've been providing us with resources to do that, ideas about how to connect with parents and guardians around creating sort of plans for students to, okay, how can we get you back into the general education setting, things like that. So it's more of a consultation model.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
On the first slide, there was a big uptick in emotional, sorry, I'm trying to find the numbers. It went from 3.7 to 7.1.
Yes.
In emotional. So the students you're talking about clearly have emotional struggles. But it also sounds to me like those kids are getting accommodations like 504 style, not necessarily modifications to a classroom. So if they can get to the classroom, they do fine. It's just they need things outside of the classroom. So do we categorize, are those kids part of this 7.1, or are those, do you follow what I'm saying?
I think any student with an emotional disability, there can be a wide range. There absolutely are some students where once they get their foot in the door into the classroom or into school, they're pretty good. There are other students where that absolutely is not the case. They're in that class, and they, really for them to stay in that class and be successful for 15 minutes is an achievement. And yeah, go ahead.
I understand. I'm just trying to figure out if in Newburyport we think about that as a accommodation or a modification, an IEP or a 504.
It really,
and whether that would be on top of the 7.1.
Yep.
Or, I'm just trying to figure out the scope of our,
Well, that 7.1% is only students on IEPs.
that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
if
exactly.
if there are accommodations, that would be even more kids with emotional.
Right, yes. So it would be interesting to look at, to your point, the number
Yeah.
of students who are on 504s for anxiety, for depression, things like that. I would guess that that number is significant.
Okay, great, thank you.
So trends and areas of focus, the percentage of students on IEPs is increasing. The percentage of students outplaced is remaining consistent. And looking at the data from last year to this year, we did see an increase in students with learning disabilities, health disabilities, and emotional disabilities. Our graduation rate and dropout rate for special education students will be an area of focus at the high school. And then in terms of programming, we talked about the focus on language-based services. And I mentioned Bright, we've talked about PBIS earlier this year. The state is continuing to place a great focus on transition services for students who are turning 14 and older. And we've done a lot of work on that, and I'm going to highlight that in a minute. We completed our coordinated program review this year, and the final report is not out, but the draft report has been issued. And the draft report was very, very positive for special education. The draft had us only obtaining 5 citations out of 53, which is really, it's great. It's great. That's a very low number of citations. So obviously, once that report is finalized, we can take a look at that in more detail.
I just have 2 quick questions. For the citations in your review, is it for paperwork or is it for
Compliance only. Compliance only.
Okay.
They don't, yeah, it's compliance.
Okay. And then I guess the other question that I had that goes up on the programming, can you talk about the support we're providing for all students in executive functioning skills at the youngest level?
Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of the executive functioning supports, that's something that I think we've all been focusing, across the board. I'm more familiar with what's kind of done at the Mullen and the Nock, and as the students get older, and at the high school. So for example, at the Nock, when I walk down the hall, they've got the boards up with, what students need to bring to class. The middle on muddle. I think that it really varies age to age. I don't know if you, Christina and Amy, have anything to add about what that looks like at the Bresnahan for EF support.
Yeah, so I mean, with the really young learners, we have a lot of visual schedules and icons. We do have the take-home folders that the kids have to write down, what they're doing for assignments. But we're really kind of just teaching them sort of routines and the norms, and then individualizing it for the kids that need a little bit more support.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to briefly touch on some successes. We have had a really successful relationship with the Immaculate Conception this year. Joan Sullivan and I have been working really closely because we do have an obligation to provide the IC with a certain percentage of our federal special education funding. And we're required to collaborate in terms of how that funding is spent. So Joan and I have met several times, and that's been great. We continue to focus on the postgraduate program. I mentioned the coordinated program review, and what I really would like to do is I did ask David Clay to come, as well as some other teachers, because if we have time, I think it would be great to show you a video with some students. So one thing that I am just so proud of, and it was Dave Clay, Tina Cochran, Christina O'Coin, and Elizabeth Libby this year did a pilot project on student-led IEP meetings. So it's the idea that a student, rather than kind of sitting at the table and being the recipient of just all this information, that they have a role and a voice in their IEP meeting. And what's great, so Dave made a video and he's shared it with the Department of Education, and we're really kind of trailblazing in this area because of this small group of educators kind of taking this and running with it. But we have to plug Dave's computer in. The video isn't that long. It's like 5 minutes. So do you want to try to plug it in? Are there any other questions while they're getting set up?
I just wanted to go back to the table of the overview. I just want to understand how come 70 students at Mullen and then 93 at Knock. You know, so are we identifying them at the Mullen? Is that, and it just, how could we be missing 23 students at the Mullen and then all of a sudden they're recognized, identified at the Knock? Are they, you know what I mean? I just can't understand that increase between.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. So why that?
That's 23, that's a lot of students.
Well, and I don't disagree with you in the sense that I actually was surprised that, because really you sort of should see a trend going like this as students get older, or flat. But as students get older, they learn strategies, they increase their independence, and I think data across any district generally is going to show that fewer students on IEPs as they advance at a certain point, like into middle and high school. And I was kind of surprised to see that 22.3% that of all of our students on IEPs, almost a quarter of them are at the Knock. Now the Knock has a larger student body than the Mullen, but
That could account for just the grade level.
Right, we're talking about 3 grades instead of 2.
Right,
So you have
right, that is a piece of
93
it.
instead of 70, that could be just that number alone.
Just that extra grade.
Right, that's true.
So did you say, so you're gonna, after this, you have meetings, these numbers will change all the way through to the end of June?
Yeah, they don't necessarily change. I think the percentages probably won't change too much, but, oh, Thursday, no, we just need sound. They do, because I collected this data when I first started working on the presentation, and since that time we've had some IEP meetings. So a lot of times over the summer is the time that I really kind of analyze it, because that's when the final numbers are out.
Okay.
Do you think the ratio of Bresnahan to high school is static?
I'm sorry, could you just
If
clarify?
17.5% of all of our IEP students are at the high school and 30.7 are at the Bresnahan, if that remains consistent, that increase, we're going to go way above 17.9% of all students. So I'm saying, like, I'm asking if the ratio, like, if we continue to help kids get off of IEPs over the year, that you find that consistent?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. That question honestly may be beyond my math skills.
I'm just, there are a lot of really young kids on IEPs.
Yes.
31, almost 31% of all kids are on IEPs. So currently, only 17.5% of them are at the high school. But if all 30.7 of them from the Bresnahan made it to the high school on IEPs,
Oh, yes.
and we maintain that level at the Bres, that's
That
going
would
to be
be-
a lot more than
oh, correct.
17.9 overall.
Yes.
So that's why I'm asking if we have a consistent ratio between Bresnahan and high school,
Right.
because it looks almost twice as many at the Bresnahan. Are we finding that consistent over the years?
Right. And I don't
Or
know
is
the
there
answer
the
to that. That would be interesting to
'Cause
look at.
You alluded to an uptick in early ed
Yes.
referrals.
In early intervention, and
Early
and
intervention
I know
referrals.
I think that Amy has talked a little bit about how at these early intervention meetings, so we have meetings. She has meetings with other local area districts, and kind of talking about the pattern of of early intervention referrals, and that overall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that overall districts are seeing an increase in children who are, born premature and surviving, whereas years ago that wouldn't have happened, and certainly issues with drug addiction and whatnot. So I think that could account for some of it.
Assuming at some point we're going to have to start really planning for that many more IEP students.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is that we can only get the information about early intervention referrals so far ahead of time, 6 months. And how much the information, it's pretty thin in terms of.
The information we get is usually a list. Oftentimes it will just have like a number, not even a student name, and we'll just get what services are getting at early intervention. So sometimes if we see that there's cognitive, or we see a particular caseworker that we know works with a more intense population, we'll kind of have an idea that we're going to get a very high needs student in. But Christina is correct, like definitely even since I've been here, like more medically fragile, less students that are classically autistic, and also more students that are, unfortunately, the opioid crisis is really hitting the schools. And those children are coming with a lot of dysregulation, and also some emotional and trauma history, and oftentimes they're being raised by grandparents.
Right.
So that's a big shift in our population.
Amy and Christina, I sort of hate to be crass about it, but I'm going to ask the question because I think that it is a useful question. Can we quantify the percentage of students that are challenged in that way, that are coming out of the opioid crisis? Do we know how, the quantity, and are we tracking that? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? I think that would be good information to have for planning purposes.
If we know. Sometimes
I
we
know
don't. Sometimes
absolutely.
that information is confidential. But there's definitely been an increase. I could certainly go back for children that are known to us and see what the numbers are. But I can tell you that when I started at the Brown in 2010, I remember one case during my time there. And now there are multiple at preschool and kindergarten.
I agree that would be helpful information to have for sure.
Just, it's part and parcel of understanding the scope of the problem.
Right.
The community.
There's also a lot of transiency too with the population and in our custody, and so sometimes we'll have them for a year and maybe not the next.
I would really encourage you to keep that data, because we've joined a class action suit against the pharmaceuticals, and this at some point they're going to be looking for this kind of detail and data from us, and that not only what has happened with public safety in terms of dealing with this epidemic, but also in terms of the impact that it's having on the increase in special education services and the cost to the district for that. So I think it would be really important to keep track of that data.
I would just add too, though, a lot of the students that we have been adopted by families here that have taken them in, or foster care.
It doesn't matter. It's still we're still required to provide services as a result of this epidemic, or addiction. So I think if there's ever a chance that we could recoup some funding to help to support the work and services that we've done in the schools for this targeted population, it would be helpful to have that data. Thank you.
So I think the video's ready. I don't know, Dave, do you want to say anything? You can. All right, you want to say something after the, okay.
This year, we asked students to take an active role in their IEP process. More specifically, we asked them to help create their transition plan, evaluate their accommodations, and help set their future goals. Along with this, we also asked our students to take a more active role in the IEP meeting. How would you describe your IEP meetings leading up to this year?
My 8th grade IEP felt more like a prison, almost. Because I was just sitting there, and I was listening, and my parents and all the teachers were making the decisions.
Mostly I just listened to what they were saying and just answer questions when I needed to.
I think for the most part in my meetings, I would just kind of sit there and nod
and just kind of go, I've just been speaking with my mom, and that's just, you don't really like to sit there and listen to that. And it just kind of felt like everyone was against you. And it was such a horrible feeling to have.
Why is it important for students to take a larger role in their IEP development?
It is the student's IEP, and I think the student is the only person who truly knows themselves and what they want to do. And I think it's really good that the student gets to like lead part of the IEP and talk about how they feel about different things.
The only person that really knows like how you can handle things is yourself.
Because it gives them an opportunity to be able to express what they think they need to be able to, what help they need in order to achieve their goals.
What steps did you take to prepare for the IEP meeting?
I was confirmed about what I was saying, so that way I could explain what I was talking about and make sure that everyone understands that what I'm saying is trying to be helpful and trying to make sure everything is in order.
When they asked me which accommodations I want, which I don't want, that's so useful. Sitting down with my liaison and really work on just finding things to really help me in the classroom.
I kind of feel like I learned what was in my IEP more from like reviewing it and going over it before the meeting too, so I could like help present it more.
What did you present in your IEP meeting?
I was able to talk about like my thoughts on different stuff, and at the end I was also able to like bring up my concerns and I wanted to like add onto the IEP.
They asked me some of the basic questions about like how I'm feeling in my classes, how I'm doing in my classes, and what things are good, what things are bad, and what I think I should, what help I need to like make it feel better in each of my classes.
So I went over my IEP, I talked about my goals and what I wanted to do after high school, maybe going into college.
Could you describe how it felt to speak and have an active role in your IEP meeting?
It felt really great. I felt like I had a lot more freedom and a lot more options.
It just felt nice that teachers care about my opinion.
It felt empowering almost, like it was like I can finally say what I feel without feeling guilty about it.
How did it feel to work with your team and help develop your IEP?
I really felt proud to be able to like talk about my goals and my current plans and stuff. And I feel like it kind of built up my confidence to like talk to other people.
I liked how I knew in the back of my head there were people there for me.
I felt really good about it. A lot of it had to do with like outside of school too, like trying to like talk to people and advocate for myself outside of school definitely helped to do it in school.
It was happy for me because like I got to help like have a bigger role in my education.
What impact did this new process have on your education?
I kind of felt in charge, and as I am getting older, I feel like I should have more responsibility on my learning.
Knowing like how I've been doing and my progress, and knowing like where I can improve and what I can continue to do.
I think I've taken off like 3 accommodations since then that I just don't feel I need, which is kind of cool too, because then I can see like the growth.
I like that I felt good about it afterwards. Like after other meetings, I would feel just kind of like, or like I would just like walk out and be like, okay. But it felt really like good, and it like kind of like made my day better, like made me feel better about myself and like my education.
As a school counselor, what do you think about this new process?
I personally really like when students take a really active part in their IEPs because it really gives them a voice, which is really empowering for them. It also, ensures that that voice is heard, and it's not, what the teachers think would be best for them or what the parents would be best for them, because when students, get to the high school level, they really want to, separate a little bit and have, more autonomy separate from, parents and teachers. And so it's really nice for them to have that opportunity to have their voice, and let it be heard, because they're so used to having people like having made decisions for them for, up till this point in their lives.
As a parent, what do you think the benefits are to this new process?
The benefits to this model of self-advocacy in the special education program is that they start to gain the confidence that they might not have had, and each time gain more and more confidence. It's critical to public speaking, advocating for themselves for, even if when they go into a career, they need to become an expert in the subject matter. So essentially they're becoming an expert in themselves and how they operate in the world.
Dave, do you just is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's been a great process for the students we've done it with. They advocate more in the classroom. After the meetings, you can see the confidence in them, and they feel more confident. And I think the best part about it is going over the IEPs and the academic, when we have academic support. We have a 73-minute block, so we take usually the first 10 minutes and we start chipping away at their IEP. So one day we may go over their goals and we address what they want to improve on their goals. And the following day we'll go over what accommodations they think they need to help achieve those goals. And it just keeps the IEP fresh in their mind, so they're always aware of what they're trying to improve on.
Awesome. Any questions?
Well done.
Yeah, terrific job. I think this is really wonderful. What changes have you seen in some of these students? Have you noticed as someone who's engaged with the learning IEP stuff?
I'd say the self-advocacy has been huge. They really feel confident to ask more questions. Usually these, some of the special education students are sometimes shy and don't feel confident asking questions because they're afraid of what people may perceive of them. But I feel like they have more confidence, and then they have the skills to actually address these questions in class.
Other questions?
Whose idea was it? Yours, David?
Oh no,
It wasn't mine. It wasn't mine. we have a really phenomenal consultant, and so she it was her idea, but I think the group of folks really took it and ran with it and did not need any convincing or cajoling to do it. So.
And you had parent support?
Yeah, which is like,
it's wonderful.
I know, it's awesome. So.
Yeah, part of that, we usually send a letter home with their IEP meeting date and invitation. We'll say that this is going to be how the meeting's set up, and then we'll call them and ask any questions if they have any beforehand, because it can be nerve-wracking.
I can only assume there are plans to grow it.
Yeah.
So these were all high school students, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So maybe in the middle school, they do a little bit of it and then get better over time and...
Absolutely, yeah. Next year, I'm hoping to have this particular consultant who has been, kind of so successful in working with the high school staff do a little bit more with the middle school because she hasn't that much. And the neat thing is that even students who are in middle school can take the role on of just introducing the folks at the meeting. I mean, really kind of, pieces of that. So I absolutely think there's a big place for it at that level.
And then maybe gen ed students start talking about goal setting and that sort of thing too.
Yeah, it absolutely connects to a much bigger picture.
Great.
So.
Thank you. Great.
Thanks, Dave. All right, thank you. I have to dismantle all these computers.
It'd be cool if there was a version of that. Faces taken off.
Absolutely.
Oh, right. Share it, yeah. Yeah, they usually have to sit away from it. Right.
Christina, one other suggestion that I would have too that I think would really go very well is to have the high school kids who are so successful work with the middle school kids.
I love that idea. Thank you.
I could see that that would motivate some kids at the middle school level as well.
Great. Thank you very much. It was very informative. The next item on the agenda is the technology upgrades at Bresnahan, Knock, and Molen. Possible vote. We've all gotten some information about this. I sort of turn it over to the superintendent to help us understand exactly what it is we're expected to do tonight.
So in completing, I just want to go through and highlight some of the things that you were said. In looking at our year-end assessment of technology, the technology committee we really started to look at the Surface Pros, which are now 4 years old. They are starting to show some signs of wear and tear. Batteries are starting to go on them, and they still have some residual value. So we kicked around some ideas about would it be worthwhile to do some reselling of them to offset some Chromebooks for a future purchase. And one of the things that the Technology Committee talked about was the fact that we'd like to purchase desktops, which we get much more life out of, and also give each of our teachers a Chromebook as well, which is a much more portable device, as you know. So that's what we were looking at for the high school, and we decided that we would look at it for Bres, Mullen, and Knock as well. Now, I just want to remind you that for Bres, Knock, and Mullen, the building committee had the foresight to put aside $250,000 from each of the building projects to have that be a replacement fund for technology. And Ethan tells me that those accounts are now, there's $254,400 in each of the accounts. There's one account for Bresnahan, and there's another account that is for both Knock and Mullen. And again, as I said, we wanted to take advantage of the length of the desktops, of the longevity of desktops, because we've been able to, I think, right around 7 years is what we've been able to get out of those, along with the durability and the inexpensive, the price point for Chromebooks. So I sent you some specific details. There's some there from Dawn Stain as well. We wanted to go out to bid as soon as possible, and we combined the devices because we were looking for a scale of economy, and we're bidding the laptops and the desktops together, and we would do a separate bid for the Chromebooks as well. So I provided you with the details of what it is that we would be purchasing. I sent you in a separate handout what Dawn's estimate, and again, it is a ballpark of what all of those devices would cost, and it was just over $200,000. We think when bids come in, we'll be actually under that for all of those.
If I could just, in the information that you sent us that came to $203,000, I don't think there was a price for the towers. So I just wondered if that's complete.
The desktops are the towers.
Desktops are the towers?
Mm-hmm.
They are, because in the info they're split into two different things. 55 towers, 155 desktops, but in the dollar amount it says 155 desktops alone. Although really, I don't know what the different. I mean, obviously I know what a tower is, but they're all the same. It's just a box, right? So I don't know what the specs, the totals on the specs is just a combination of things, or how does that work? But
I can tell you my understanding would be that the towers and the desktop, I'm not sure why those are broken out unless he's buying two different types of desktops.
Right.
You know, there are some that are built into monitors, there's some that actually have a tower, there's a few different kinds. I don't know that for a fact, I'm guessing.
But it's not a total of 210, it's a total of 155 units.
Right.
So the 55 towers that he put into the original spec email aren't in the second emails.
Right.
Like
We'd have to ask Dawn.
Yeah.
I think we'd have to ask for some
55
clarity.
towers and 155 desktops.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not part of the
Let me give him a call.
200,000.
The other piece to all of this that I was unaware of, what I was aware of was that the accounts had been created for each of the building projects for technology replacement. What I was not aware of was that City Council had to approve the transfers. I received an email from Ethan after the capital plan passed with an email that simply said that he'd be sending account numbers, I wrongly made the assumption that we could just access that. So it does have to go to city council. And the mayor knows the timeline on that, any expectations of city council. That's the piece that not sure of.
Sorry, there's just, this storm you cannot go right on High Street. There's a huge tree that's down, there's wires down, it's just this hit really, this was the chief, that's why I take the call. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened in a very short period of time in terms of weather. I will update you before the end of the meeting because the texts are still coming in. Anyway, back to technology. They want to put this out to bid, and I understand that it makes more sense to bundle all of this. And when I saw the bid that was being released, I said, no, time out, you can't do this. We have to, this has to, it wasn't part of the capital plan that we approved, nor the city council approved. So that's why we're stepping back to do this. I would like us to vote on this tonight, if at all possible, in terms of supporting this, because the city council only has one meeting in July on the 16th, and that means it wouldn't go out to bid until probably the end of August. And that's a long time to wait in terms of being able to move this project forward. So I don't know if you have other questions.
Yeah, just to make sure that I'm clear, that I'm understanding, the 203,000 actually represents all of the district, the whole district, the high school doesn't.
No. I have Don on the phone, and I just asked him about the towers. The 55 towers and the monitors are part of the high school and part of that capital plan that you voted on. So those are separate. So that's why you're only seeing the 155
on the other part.
On the other part, because that is for the Knockmullen. Yeah. And I still have him on the phone if you have any other questions.
Just curiosity about the lab. We're buying 18 laptops. It sounds like it's very program specific to buy 18.
18 laptops is that admin and people who traveled on. Yeah.
Typically psychologists.
Admin and staff that travels from building to building.
And I just have this question for Don. Brian had raised this to me, and I suggested he get in touch and didn't hear back from anybody. Brian, can you explain it? It's to do with networking and
it's more
software?
just curiosity than anything, but we're list Windows 10 Home. I was under the impression that way back, if it was the home edition of Windows, it wasn't really the same robust networking capability. So is it 10 Home?
Yeah.
That will work fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We have a licensing agreement with Microsoft, so they'll be all imaged with Windows 10 Professional, but we save $75 per machine by going with Home.
Oh, so then we get like a free upgrade, basically?
Is that like a
we are, it's part of our licensing agreement. We can put Windows on any device that comes with a Windows license. So when they come in at Windows 10 Home, we will be re-imaging them with all of our software, including Windows 10 Professional.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Dawn?
No, that all makes sense.
Thanks, Dawn. I appreciate it. I said thank you. They're all set. Appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Any further discussion or questions?
I would just like to move the question.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Additional discussion?
What is the motion?
The motion is to...
Good question.
The motion is to approve the reissuing of the bids for technology to include a modification of using Chromebooks for faculty, is that correct?
That is Chromebooks.
For faculty.
That I didn't understand. I thought we were approving $203,000 from the building fund to spend on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just funded in a different way.
Again,
Yeah.
I just want to say that that's an estimate, so
Yeah.
I think the bids are going to come in lower than that.
Should I put that amount in the
Yes.
253,000?
No, 203,190 is the estimate.
So just a question, if we approve the 203,000, it comes in under, that's fine, right? Yes, we don't have to approve it again, do we? Okay.
And maybe include the numbers of the machines, if you will.
You certainly can do that. We can give Mrs. Kennedy a copy of this.
Okay.
I do have this little thing, is that,
Yeah, we're gonna approve that.
is that what you want in there? Okay, all right, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Holliday, what do I need to provide to city council? You just let me know that tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is superintendent.
Okay. When Mr. Menon and I met a month or so ago, one of the things that he suggested that I do as I am wrapping up here in Newburyport was to put together sort of a 5-year summary of some of the accomplishments across the district. And I just want to preface this by saying that none of the bullet points that I sent to you were my accomplishments alone. There was a lot of teamwork involved in this, including members of the school committee. And that this is work that and accomplishments across the district over the last 5 years. And because Sean is sitting in the audience, one of the things that I also included that Mr. Menon asked me to do was to list what I saw as future tasks. So I'll spend a couple of minutes and just remind people, this was a little like a walk down memory lane for me. Going back to my first year here, I took a look at my entry plan, and I'm very pleased to see that just about everything that was on the entry plan has been accomplished. Obviously the opening of Bresnahan, the renovations at Knockmolin, all of the different things that we've done across the curriculum over the last 5 years. The staff that we've added over the last 5 years, the support from the city in terms of funding, the larger grants that we have received from NEF, from Swayze, those have all helped to move us forward. You take a look at our athletic fields and just how far we've come in a very, very short time. The fact that we added just under $2 million worth of technology due to the building projects. We've developed a 5-year technology plan. Again, we've added staffing in every single building. We implemented a new phonics program, K2. We have the writing implementation of the SRSD program, which is self-regulated strategy development in grades 3 through 5. I think one of the other things that I do want to highlight, because I think that this is important, and it's important as Sean moves forward as superintendent, that the district is very stable now. We have a stable staff. Our leadership team has been very stable, and that's made a huge difference in terms of us being able to achieve many of the things on this list. This has really helped consistency, having the same people doing the work in the district. We aligned our science curriculum to the new standards. We have been implementing new science resources, K-8, and that's been really exciting. As Christina talked about tonight, we have really developed a variety of responses around social emotional learning because our students have those needs, and we've really tried to address those. We added back business classes at the high school. We opened the student store. We have a DECA chapter now. The partnerships that we have developed with Merrimack, with Salem State, with Endicott, and North Shore Community College has given us a steady stream of student teachers, of interns, and fellows. And this has created a pipeline for us from which to hire. We have hired 4 people who have student taught or been an intern or a fellow. And that's really exciting to be able to do that. We've also been working, Nancy and I have been working collaboratively with the City Hall financial team to improve the budget process and refine it every single year. We've offered additional flex classes at Newburyport High School. Engineering and astronomy are 2 that come right to mind. We provide consistent nursing services across the district. We've had to expand those due to some of our medical needs of students, and the nurses across the district are really an amazing group and are a very strong group. And I feel very fortunate that we have nurses of their caliber here in Newburyport. We added a literacy camp to our summer program, and we partnered, as Angela told you a few weeks ago, with Amesbury for the first time in terms of our ELL camp. And Christina talked a little bit tonight about our post-grad program and how much that has improved over the time. There's always more work to do. And I've listed a variety of different things. Obviously, we want to continue with expansion of world language. We're going to continue to need to look at our counseling resources across the district and social emotional learning. PLC work will continue around building initiatives and also our strategic plan. We want to expand STEM to the high school. We'd like to, I'm suggesting completing an assessment of each of our schools in terms of culture and getting our arms around the district-wide culture as well to continue to make improvements there. And continuing to build collaborative relationships and work through our members of the leadership team. That's work that we have started, and I think that we have made great progress there, but that's work that needs to be ongoing. So that's a quick summary of kind of where we've been and where we're going.
It's impressive. The district certainly has changed and evolved, I think, in some very, very constructive ways in the time that you've been here. Under your list of accomplishments, if it was my list, I definitely would have put down negotiated successfully a 3-year contract with the teachers union as an accomplishment.
I think it is. I put that down as a future task.
That's coming up. Terrific. Thank you very much. Anybody have any thoughts? Great. Next item on the agenda. Thank you, Susan. Next item on the agenda is the school choice update.
Which I just need to dig out of my file. I'll be happy to give it. There it is. Okay. Mr. Mann had also asked me to sort of give a little bit of a highlight to talk about school choice. So during the annual budget process, the school committee is asked to vote on whether or not we'll be offering school choice. That's part of the budget process. Once that vote has been taken and the school committee allows school choice, the formal notice is published in the Newburyport Daily News and the district website announcing that we will be accepting school choice students for whatever year it is and in what grades. After the public notice appears, that's when we will take applications for a school choice seat by completing an application form. Forms may be obtained in the superintendent's office and or on the district website, and then applications are due back to the superintendent's office. The Office of the Superintendent notifies school choice applicants by mail when the student is accepted. Applications received after a date determined by the office means that people get put on a waiting list. If there are more applications than school choice slots, a lottery will be conducted. And once the committee has approved the number of seats, we keep choices kept open until the first day of school. And to date, this is where we are. In grade 1, we had 5 seats approved. We accepted 5. 1 withdrew. We accepted 1 more. And we have not heard from anyone else. So we're full in that grade. In grade 6, 7 seats were approved. We accepted 7. 3 are active in the process right now. And we have not heard back from 3. And 1 person, we had a phone call, but they have not followed up. So right now we have 3 active in the process. In grade 9, 17 seats were approved. We accepted 19 because 2 we took off the wait list after 2 had withdrawn. And a total now of 5 have withdrawn. So the high school is working with 14 prospective students currently.
So that assumes, with the high school, that assumes that the wait list is exhausted?
The wait list is not exhausted because we still have 17 seats. We have 14 names that we're dealing with, so we still have 3 openings there.
So, but are there people on the waiting list?
There are not.
Okay.
Everybody's come off the waiting list.
Okay.
So we did vote to accept 17, and that's it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any additional questions sort of about the process? Great. Terrific. Thank you very much. I turn this part of the meeting over for policy updates. Second reading to Nick.
Okay. Okay, so we have the following policies that we submitted for first reading and we've now received for second reading. And I would ask for your approval for additional comments if you have. We will try and approve them with your comments if need be. Some people have said they might have comments, and I did not receive any, so that's why I'm saying this is the way they stand as of now. So the first one is policy Section A, Foundation and Basic Commitments. It's a policy on non-discrimination. It's file ACA, and what we did there was add pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions to the list of protected classes. So that is a change there. There were a series of policies that affected. Why don't I just mention them all? We can hopefully approve them all together. And we won't have to go back. The second one is file ACB, also the same thing, non-discrimination statement. It's Foundations and Basic Commitment, Section A. And then the next one that we have is
in our packet, the next one is meal charge.
Yeah, but that's not.
Equal
I'm looking for all the ones that are
GBA.
pregnancy and pregnancy-related condition.
GBA,
It would
equal
be
employment.
GBA.
Yeah.
And that basically takes that policy and applies it to employees. And I believe that is
GCF.
Yeah, GCF, which applies the same protected class to our hiring policies, hiring practices.
JB.
Right, JB2.
JB, same thing, in 2 locations. J is policies on student life.
School choice too, you added it.
School choice.
JFBB.
JFBB. And that would be it. So I would like to move approval of those aforementioned policies.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Approved unanimously.
Excellent. The next policy I would ask for your approval on is the policy on our meal plan, meal charges. And basically what we have done here is put into place a policy that we can use for defining how and when we can have kids charge. The whole idea is that we will feed kids and we will get money back from their parents, and what actions we can take in order to get money back from their parents. That's what this policy describes. I'd like to ask the approval of this policy, please.
Second. You have a second.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
The next one that we have is a very short policy. I love it. It is a policy on crowdfunding.
It's got the longest file name, though.
Oh, I know. Oh, you got it now. It's tough. It is file GBEBD. Basically, this requires any employee of our district to seek approval from the superintendent if they're going to go after any source of crowdfunding for funding any activities in the district. I would ask your approval of this new policy.
Second.
Second.
It's nice to see us developing a policy that's sort of current. We're not chasing things, to make policies about them. This is coming up now, so.
We got a lot of people do this.
Was that for crowdfunding?
Crowdfunding.
Has this been a thing? Or
It's been a thing among schools.
Well, I know it's a big thing. My
And
teachers live and die by donors choose.
so we
So I
have,
don't know if it's a thing here is what I'm
it's
asking.
not a thing here yet, but
It's coming.
we want to have, we want to
Have some little
Yeah.
pockets.
Yeah.
No, it's becoming a thing amongst athletic teams.
And marching bands.
Nice uniforms.
Just saying.
Could have been, but I think we're okay.
Great, nice job. I was
We have
looking for that hat.
Waiting for those
On Saturday.
I was looking for that
last few
last
thousand
Saturday.
from the IEP.
I would ask approval of the policy and we did say.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, the last one that we have to do is.
We didn't
Well,
vote.
let's vote.
We didn't vote yet. We didn't vote yet.
We didn't vote yet. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
The last policy I have for your consideration in the second final reading today is student submission to educational surveys and research. This is a policy that we did not have in place. It's been suggested by MASC for us to have in place. Basically, it allows parents to opt their kids out of any survey that might be offensive to them for any reason, or for students themselves if they are over the age of 18 to opt out of any survey. So that is, I think, in a nutshell what this policy is about. It does require us to inform parents that the survey is coming. One of the things that we're trying to put into place for the known surveys, because there are certain surveys that we know are going to happen either every other year or every year, is to have a blanket opt-in issued in the same way we do for for student photography, for example, photographs of students at the beginning of each year. So parents would then sign off on it, and we'd be covered for that. If there's any additional surveys, that's fine, but they can still opt out at any time up to 2 weeks before the survey.
That implies that we're going to be informing them at least 3 weeks before the
Right.
survey's coming. So
I think we were hung up last time also talking about the MCAS survey.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get a clear answer on that yet, because parents cannot opt out of MCAS. So that makes me think that they can't opt out of that survey, because that's part of at the end of MCAS. But I have not been able to get a clear answer out of that statement.
So I'm just saying, if this policy implies that they can opt out of any survey.
That is correct.
So we should
Maybe
make note of
qualify
the
it.
fact that some surveys are given to us by the state. So it should be any survey that we choose to administer as at a local level. Maybe.
Yeah, no,
That's one way out of it.
That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, as we get these other surveys, like the MCAS ones, is we inform parents and say, hey, it's a requirement of the state. No opt-out allowed.
Are we allowed to say that?
Well, officially, the state does say that about MCAS, is that, it's a any public school that receives public funding, every student is required to take the state assessment. There's no official opt-out of that test.
just as long as we're having a discussion, if a kid finishes the MCAS and doesn't finish the survey, does that MCAS get graded?
I don't know that question.
It was not possible to submit.
You couldn't submit.
Because it's all electronically. It didn't.
Right, wouldn't submit it unless you finished it.
The survey is actually embedded in one of the test sections. So when a kid finishes the section, it gives them the survey, and then you couldn't submit the test without that.
Without doing the survey.
Which was cheeky, devious of them. Deviant, however you want to put it.
I mean, in theory, they could just fill it out with gibberish.
Strategic.
What's that?
They could just fill it out with gibberish and then hit submit.
I think I said it last time too, but Declan came home a little shaken by some of the questions. They were, he said, quote unquote, personal in nature. Like, I think a lot of things about family life and feeling safe here and there and that kind of thing, like they were the sort of questions that parents would want to opt out of, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't know if parents know that that survey exists, and or if, I don't know what our plan is, but according to this, we should either make a caveat or figure out a way to put that in there.
I agree with that.
How do you describe us?
We get to say except for the MCAS survey, which is out of our hands.
Or except for mandated.
Surveys by the
mandated
state.
surveys.
Define the surveys.
Which is interesting because the organization that mandates that we have this kind of a policy is the U.S. Department of Education. So
it's a big office, Nick. I don't know if they talk too well to each other.
If we want to be funded in any way, shape, or form by the U.S. Department of Education, then we need to give people a chance to opt out of surveys. Of any program or wholly or partially funded by the U.S. Department of Education to submit survey analyses or evaluation that reveals information concerning, and they do give you the qualifications in terms of what might be considered objectionable materials there, or objectionable questions.
I believe number 2 is well represented on this year's MCAS survey.
No student shall be required to take part of any program wholly or partially funded by the U.S. Department, unless they happen to be required. I can look and see what wording we can hold off on this. If
Is there, no,
state or
it's important. Is there, do you know, because I haven't seen the surveys, is there an NA option that you can sort of not answer?
Nobody's allowed to see the survey. Like, educators are not allowed to look at the screens while kids are taking the test, so I haven't seen the survey either, nor did I grill the kids when they came home from it, so I don't know if you can opt out of questions that way.
Bruce, I did pull some information about this, and I will send out, I just pulled out some general information from the department around this, around surveys, and I can send that forward. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It was after the last time we discussed it.
Let's resume conversation after we get that material.
Sure.
And take a look at it.
Yeah. I'm happy to table this.
Yeah, no, I think that Dave raises a very good point.
Yep. It's kind of odd to say you may opt out unless you're not allowed to opt out.
No, I don't think it's that odd, considering.
Is there just out of curiosity, is there an SAT survey too? College
I don't
boards?
think there is.
No demographic information on SAT sheets?
Demographic information is...
I'm just looking at like income.
It's really limited.
Yeah.
Religious affiliations, that sort of thing.
No.
No, I don't think so.
I can't answer that definitively. Okay. It could be in your application for the test. I don't know.
Right.
Nick, thank you very much for all the work that you and the committee have done. It's terrific.
Pleasure. We still have more to come.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I'm saying we will have more policies to come.
I assume the school committee evaluation is just you exhorting us to get our...
Yes.
It's July 13th, right? Was that the date?
That's the date.
What's the date? I'm sorry.
July 13th.
You have a long weekend to take care of it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you do for a little while, and then you eat, and then you go back and do for a little while, and you sleep, and then you go back and do for a little while.
I think it'll be very helpful to have some kind of results for our retreat.
I agree. Assistant Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I wanted to let you know that we have 6 in-house professional development offerings running this summer. As you know, we've been offering a series of courses through Lesley University on building trauma-sensitive schools. And we're in our second round, building a second cohort of teachers who have taken all 4 in that series. So we're offering the 3rd course in the series this June. As a matter of fact, it started Saturday. So it's running the 29th and July 9th as well. We're wrapping up our 3-year commitment to ongoing professional development around responsive classroom for our elementary schools. This is our final summer of that professional development. And then we'll train new staff as they come along. But this has kind of been an ongoing cycle to try to get all of the staff trained. We have a new course that's being run by a teacher, a couple courses that are being run by, matter of fact, 4 teachers in district. The first one is creating effective learning stations. And this is being taught by Lisa Alexander. And these are based on, she started this process this year based on the process standards. And so it's a really interesting class, and that's open to teachers who might want to try to build some learning stations and incorporate that into their instruction. We have Chris Apicios, who is teaching English learners and special education. What's different or additional? And that just flew off the shelf, so to speak, as soon as we advertised it. And it just, goes to show how we're all still growing and learning about our English learners. And the teachers are very interested in learning more about how we define what would be typical growth for an English learner versus perhaps a red flag that there may be a more serious problem in the process of learning for a student. We're offering a technology camp that has a variety of topics that teachers can pick and choose from. They can participate one day or they can participate all 5 days, depending on what the topics are and what they'd like to learn about. And then we're also offering a 2-day Google Suite for all educators, both taught by our technology integrators, Catherine Page and Jackie Russo. In addition to that, I think I mentioned the last time that we had a number of summer curriculum projects. This has been sort of an all-time high in the district. We have approximately 25 summer curriculum projects running, which is also, it's a wonderful professional development when you can collaborate with one another and really talk through the curriculum that you're building and the instructional practices that you want to put forward. We have anywhere from 1 to 6 teachers working on each project. So that's a lot of teachers in the district that are going to be involved in this work this summer. So I think that speaks very highly for the commitment from our teaching staff to the work that they're doing. And then I also just wanted to bring up today, I hope some of you may have been able to get over to the library at the Knock-Mullen and see some of the I Am We exhibit that was today. And this is a social studies project that they start working on really from the beginning of the year. And it's based on the document that you are familiar with, that We the People. And this teaches the students that each one of them is part of the we, and thus the name I Am We. And so as the students learn more about U.S. history in their study throughout the year, they pick a topic that they're particularly interested in, and they dive into that topic and they research it, and they try to determine what kind of actions they might be able to take around that topic as a citizen. And they're really powerful projects. Today was the exhibit, and there were a number of topics, anything from things that are happening in our schools to environmental issues, to building safe routes to school, to medical testing, to women's rights. I mean, it just ran the gamut. And they're very thoughtfully done. The students profile themselves when they start the project to really talk about who they are as an individual, what their families and friends are like, a little bit of background about each of the students, so you learn about them personally. Then they research their topic, they present the research on their topic, and then they do a reflection on what impact they might be able to have as a citizen moving forward around this topic of interest. So they were great, really well done, so fun to read. You can really get lost in them. I think one of the most exciting things for me to see is as the students evolve in their exhibits over the years, you really see their growth and their sophistication by this final 8th grade project. They have a number of community partners that have worked with them. I know at the last CIE meeting, we talked about the new social studies standards and how civics is woven through all of those standards. And one of the things that is in the new standards is a project at high school level that students follow a passion and what their civic engagement in that passion is. So I talked with Jen Groskin today about she is going to be connecting with Matt LaChapelle at the high school, and they're going to be talking about how the I Am We project might be the beginning of that work that then carries us forward into high school. So one of the things we had discussed is that we felt like Newburyport was in a really good place as far as the implementation of the new standards with the work we're already doing, and this was yet just another example of that.
Angela, quick question on that. This is obviously some fabulous work, and we'd like more people to see it than those people who happen to be able to get to the library. Do you think there might be an opportunity to exhibit some of those displays, some of that work at the Newburyport Public Library, so people who are not necessarily attending our schools or have reason to be in our schools can still see some of the work that's being done.
That's a really great suggestion, Nick. I'll talk to Jen about that. Yeah. I think the students would be really proud to have their work exhibited at the public library. Look into that.
Terrific, thank you.
Angela?
Yes.
One quick question. I forget if it was last year or the year before, we did a Google Apps night for parents.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, just listening to you talk about having some of those workshops again for teachers, could we go back and do more of that?
For parents?
Like I think a lot of people have a learning curve to overcome.
Yeah.
And as we buy more of this stuff and as the Chromebooks are going one-to-one and that sort of thing, that it'd be a pretty good idea to try to get parents on board.
Yeah, I think
That's a great idea.
It is.
I also think that if we did something, whether it's by building or even by grade level, and make it specific, that would be.
I mean, truthfully, the kids could probably run the whole thing.
Yeah,
too,
They probably
so
could.
That might make for a very interesting evening at the school.
Right.
You know, seriously,
Yeah.
with the kids and the teachers together doing a kind of an overview of Chromebooks, how they work for parents, what we do with them, how they work. I think that would be really helpful.
I think that's a great idea. Definitely. Thank you.
Sure.
Subcommittee reports. Joint Ed won't be meeting until the fall. Finance.
Meeting on Wednesday, the 20th, 8:15 a.m.
CIE.
Not till the fall. We thought that was cruel to have Susan come back to us 3 days before she was on time.
I guess we've come to that time of the meeting where I have to turn it over to Mr. Cole.
Thank you. I just have to get something that I'd like to present to the superintendent.
Terrific. Thank you. Do we have a drum roll? Yeah, Dave. Drum roll. I think go to Mrs. Kennedy.
Yeah, I think we have.
Sorry.
Capital improvement.
On behalf of the Newburyport School Committee, we present you this gift and appreciation for all your work in the district 2014-2018, for all the service you provided to the children and students of the Newburyport schools, and the support you've given the faculty, staff, and administration. Thank you for setting a course for us, for this school district to work toward a vision which was successfully begun with your implementation of our strategic plan. And also, you've had a remarkable career in public schools. And thank you for being such a long-standing leader and supporter of the importance of public education.
Thank you.
Steve, should you open it up here?
Yes.
Sure.
Let me just say that I said this the night of my retirement party, that, you know, this has been such a great place to end my career, that I couldn't be happier. I feel like I was able to accomplish some of the things that you charged me with when I first arrived here, and that feels really good. And I feel like I'm leaving it in great hands for Sean. And
Here's a card.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Features a picture of
Oh, that's great.
oh yeah, and that's like from
That's
1900s.
That's great. Okay.
Want me to help you with this a little?
Sure.
Now you gotta, you're doing well.
Good job wrapping it, Steve.
Wasn't easy. So if you slide it
I
out.
noticed the gold and red.
I knew that I had to sub it out.
Oh, I see, it's too big. Okay.
Yeah.
Even is your car big enough to hold that?
So now we have to open the other side, so we have to tip it upside down.
Yeah. You are prepared.
Yeah.
He said, turn it upside down. He knows what he's doing.
Got it covered.
He's got it
Steve has a
covered.
knife,
I have to
just
trust
tuck
him.
it inside.
Now we have another box inside.
And yet another.
Sorry.
My very own. Oh, thank you so
Clip the
much.
ship to Seawitch, and the inscription, Susan Vaccaro, Superintendent of Schools, with appreciation from the Newburyport School Committee.
Thank you very much. This is fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. That's great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, everything's calm, I just heard from the chief, but I do know that there is a huge tree down on High Street is what he told me. So it's between High Street by the rail trail and the one bridge. So you might want to go Low Street or other alternative routes at this point.